They mocked his mail-order rifle. It was an oddity, a civilian weapon in the heart of the most brutal close-quarters combat the Pacific had ever seen. To the Marines of the 1st Marine Division, bogged down in the fetid, corpse-ridden hell of Palayu, it seemed a bizarre affectation. Why would a man facing an enemy of fanatical determination and cunning choose a weapon they'd never seen before? This is not just a story of a sniper's duel. It is the story of Private First Class George H. Lynn, a young rifleman from Altoona, Pennsylvania, and the weapon he believed in, the .36 caliber Winchester Model 70, purchased from a Sears Roebuck catalog for the sum of $99.50. In September 1944, on a blistering coral island measuring just 6 square miles, Lynn and his commercial hunting rifle would face the ultimate test. The Japanese defenders, entrenched in a labyrinth of limestone caves and jagged ridges, were masters of camouflage and patience. Their snipers, invisible and lethal, were picking off Marines one by one. The mission was a failure in the making. Morale was crumbling under the unrelenting sun and steel, and the High Command's underestimation of the island's defenses was costing lives by the hour. This is the account of how one man's faith in his own tool turned him into a phantom hunter, stalking the hunters themselves. To understand the sheer improbability of George Lynn's story, one must first grasp the strategic disaster unfolding on Operation Stalemate II. The invasion of the Palau Islands was launched on September 15, 1944. The 1st Marine Division, veterans of Guadalcanal and Cape Gloucester, expected a tough but relatively swift fight. They were horrifically mistaken. The Japanese commander, Colonel Kunio Nakagawa, had abandoned costly beachfront defenses. Instead, he engineered a defense in depth centered on the island's network of over 500 natural and reinforced caves within the Omerbergal mountain ridges, a nightmarish terrain of coral rock, sheer cliffs, and labyrinthine passages the Marines would soon dub Bloody Nose Ridge. The Japanese 14th Infantry Division was dug in with interlocking fields of fire, hidden mortar positions, and a grim determination to die for the Emperor. The temperature soared above 115 degrees Fahrenheit. The coral rock reflected the heat like a furnace, and the stench of decaying bodies, both American and Japanese, mixed with cordite and coral dust to create a palpable miasma of death. Water was scarce, and Marines quickly learned that the only way to advance was with explosives, flamethrowers, and point-blank courage. It was in this inferno that PFC George Lynn served with Company K, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marine Regiment. Lynn was not a designated scout sniper. The Marine Corps had no formal sniper program at the time. He was a rifleman, but he was a rifleman with a background in hunting and an unwavering confidence in the weapon he had brought with him, the Winchester Model 70, a commercial sporting rifle renowned for its accuracy and smooth bolt action, chambered in the same .36 round as the standard issue M1 Garand. While his buddies carried their semi-automatic Garands, Lynn's bolt-action rifle drew skepticism. In a fight dominated by volume of fire and rapid engagement, a single-shot weapon seemed a relic. But Lynn knew its true value: precision. And on Palayu, precision was about to become the rarest and most valuable commodity on Earth. The initial assault waves had secured a tenuous foothold on the beaches, but progress inland immediately stalled. By D+2, September 17th, the brutal reality of Palayu was settling into the bones of every Marine. The advance was measured in yards, each one paid for in blood. The enemy was seldom seen. Instead, death came from unseen angles. The sudden crack of a rifle, the whoosh of a knee mortar round, the relentless chatter of a Nambu light, machine gun from a cave mouth 300 yards away. Japanese snipers, often tied into trees or concealed in coral crevices, became a particular terror. They targeted officers, radiomen, and corpsmen, aiming to decapitate unit leadership and break the chain of compassion. Fear gripped the men, a constant, low-grade dread that made every step forward an act of will. The terrain was a sniper's paradise and an infantryman's nightmare. Sharp, crumbling coral-cut uniforms and skin. The sheer cliffs of the Omerbergal created natural killing zones. And the caves. The caves were omnipresent. A position cleared by flamethrower and grenade one day could be reoccupied by enemy soldiers moving through underground tunnels the next. The psychological strain was immense. It was in this cauldron that George Lynn's unique weapon began to transition from curiosity to potential asset. The standard M1 Garand, while a superb battle rifle, was not designed for extreme precision at long range. Its effective range was around 400 to 500 yards, but engaging a small hidden target at that distance was a matter of luck as much as skill. The Winchester Model 70, however, was a different beast. Its heavy barrel, finely tuned trigger, and the inherent accuracy of its bolt action made it capable of consistent first-round hits at distances that confounded the Garand. Lynn, understanding this, began to employ his rifle not in a general advance, but in a specific defensive role. He would provide overwatch, scanning the treacherous ridges and shattered trees with a practiced hunter's eye, seeking the minute irregularities that betrayed a concealed enemy. By the afternoon of September 18th, the crisis for Company K reached a fever pitch. Pinned down by accurate fire from a complex of caves on a ridge to their front, the unit was taking casualties without even seeing the source. The company commander, desperate to regain momentum, ordered a squad to flank the position. As the Marines rose to move, a sharp crack echoed, and the squad leader crumpled, a sniper's bullet through his helmet. The men dove for cover, their movement stalled. It was then that Lynn, positioned slightly to the rear on a slight rise of hard coral, saw it, a faint puff of dust, different from the prevailing breeze, from a narrow fissure near the ridge's crest, nearly 600 yards away. To the naked eye, it was nothing. To Lynn, it was a signature. He settled into a prone position, the stock of the Winchester cool against his cheek despite the oppressive heat. He estimated the wind, adjusted his elevation knob with a calm deliberation that stood in stark contrast to the chaos around him, and took a slow, steady breath. The crack of the 36 was distinct from the Garands around him, sharper, lonelier. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, through his scope, Lynn saw a dark-shaped slump partially out of the fissure, and a Type 90 9R rifle clattered down the coral slope. A subdued cheer rose from the pinned squad. The flanking maneuver continued. One kill. The mocking of the mail-order rifle began to quiet, replaced by a wary curiosity. The following day, September 19th, presented a new and more insidious threat. Japanese snipers had begun using the carcasses of destroyed American vehicles and the bodies of fallen Marines as hides and bait. It was a ghastly tactic designed to lure corpsmen and recovering parties into traps. Early that morning, a platoon from Company K was halted by fire coming from the direction of a burned-out Amtrak. 2 Marines had been hit attempting to reach what they thought was a wounded comrade lying near its hull. This situation was desperate and morally draining. Lynn, again using the elevated, broken ground to his advantage, spent nearly an hour in silent observation. He watched the corpse, the flies, the surrounding scrub. Then he saw it. The slightest movement, not from the body, but from a shadow beneath the Amtrak's crumpled front end. A sniper had dug a shallow pit there, using the corpse as a macabre range marker. The distance was over 400 yards. Lynn's shot had to be perfect. It had to thread between the Amtrak's tracks and strike a target only partially visible. The report of the Winchester echoed across the battlefield. The hidden shadow jerked and then was still. A subsequent burst of machine gun fire confirmed the sniper's position had been neutralized, and the platoon medics safely retrieved their fallen. By noon that day, the tally for the mail-order rifle had risen to 4 confirmed kills. Word began to spread through the battalion. The oddity was becoming a legend. By September 20th, the battle had descended into a grinding, brutal stalemate. The 5th Marines were now fully committed to the assault on Bloody Nose Ridge itself. Progress was non-existent. Every cave was a fortress, every crevice a potential machine gun nest. Casualties mounted at an alarming rate. Heat exhaustion claimed as many men as enemy bullets. Water rationing was critical, and the wounded often had to wait hours under fire to be evacuated. For the snipers of the Japanese garrison, it was a target-rich environment. They had perfected their art, camouflaged with coral dust and vegetation, sometimes wearing makeshift ghillie suits of local foliage. They would wait for high-value targets. They knew to aim for the map readers, the men with binoculars, the ones barking orders. The command structure of Company K was being deliberately and systematically eroded. The crisis peaked in a small, nameless draw leading up to the base of Hill 100, a dominant feature of the Ridge network. Company K was ordered to take this draw as a staging point for a company-sized assault the next morning. As they moved in, a storm of fire erupted not from the front, but from 3 separate, elevated positions on the draw's flanks. It was a perfectly executed ambush. An ammo-light machine gun stitched a deadly pattern across the approach, forcing the lead platoon to scatter behind shattered coral boulders. Simultaneously, precise rifle fire began picking off Marines who tried to spot the machine gun nest. Within minutes, the company commander was grazed by a bullet that shattered his radio. The platoon sergeant was dead, and 2 corpsmen were wounded attempting to reach the screaming Marine lying in the open. They were trapped, completely immobilized, with the light beginning to fade. To retreat was to fail the objective and expose themselves to fire. To advance was suicide. The Japanese snipers, hidden in their coral perches, held every advantage. They could wait. The Marines, exposed and bleeding, could not. Morale, that intangible force that carries men forward, was on the verge of collapse. The fear was not of death, but of useless, attritional death with no gain. The men were pinned helpless, and the enemy snipers were methodically dismantling their leadership, shot by shot. This was the moment the battle, for this company, on this draw, could be lost. The relentless psychological pressure of the unseen shooter is a unique form of terror. Every head that rose could be the last. Every whispered order could draw a bullet. A desperate paralysis set in. It was in this crucible that George Lin, having moved with the company, assessed the tactical disaster. From his covered position, he used his scope not as a targeting device, but as a high-powered observation tool. He began the patient, deadly calculus of counter-sniping. The machine gun was the immediate threat, but its location was obvious by its muzzle flash. The snipers were the true anchors of the ambush. They kept heads down, allowing the machine gun to dominate. Lin had to find them first. He focused on the left flank, a jagged outcrop about 350 yards away. He scanned for lines of sight, for any aperture that offered a view of the killing zone below. For 10 agonizing minutes, he saw nothing. Then, a flicker, the almost imperceptible reflection off a glass lens. It was gone in an instant, but it was enough. A Japanese sniper was using a telescopic sight, likely from a captured Springfield or his own scoped rifle. Lin marked the spot, the dark, vertical crack in the coral, no wider than a man's shoulders. He had no clear shot. The sniper was deep within the fissure. He would have to wait for the man to fire again, to reveal himself by a few precious inches. The tension was electric. Below him, Marines groaned in pain. The machine gun chattered intermittently, spraying the rocks. Then, crack. A spurt of dust kicked up near a Marine trying to signal with a mirror. The Japanese sniper had fired. And in that moment, Lin saw the briefest extension of a rifle barrel and a sliver of a uniform from the crack. It was a target measured in square inches, not feet. Lin exhaled, squeezed the trigger of the Winchester, and sent a 180-grain .36 bullet on its journey. The round struck true, sparking off the coral interior of the fissure with a visible spang. The enemy rifle did not withdraw. One sniper neutralized. The illumination of the first sniper provided a minute window of opportunity. The volume of aimed fire decreased marginally. Lin, now a figure of intense focus for the men around him, shifted his attention to the right flank. This sniper was more cautious, revealing nothing. Lin employed a hunter's trick. With the help of a fellow Marine, he staged a distraction, a helmet carefully raised on a stick just above a rock, not in a repetitive, obvious pattern, but with irregular, hesitant movements meant to mimic a peeking soldier. They baited the trap. For a full minute, nothing. Then, a bullet tore through the helmet, spinning it off the stick. But the shot had come from a different location than expected, lower down and further to the right. This sniper was clever, using a secondary firing port. Lin, however, had been scanning the area below the original suspected position. The muzzle flash, visible even in the late afternoon haze, gave him a definitive fix. The sniper was in a low, overhanging shelf of coral, nearly invisible against the shadowed rock face. The range was longer, nearly 500 yards, and the angle was acute. Lin had to adjust his aim significantly for elevation. He calculated, dialed his scope, and steadied himself against the baking coral. This shot was the turning point. If he missed, the sniper would vanish, and the ambush would continue unabated. He fired. A shower of coral dust erupted from the shelf's edge. Had he hit? A long, suspenseful moment passed. Then, from that position, no further fire came. The second sniper was silent. With the 2 primary precision threats removed, the Marines could now address the machine gun nest. A Browning automatic rifle team, emboldened by Lin's counter-sniping, laid down suppressive fire while a fire team maneuvered with grenades and a Thompson submachine gun. Within minutes, a sharp explosion signaled the nest destruction. The ambush was broken. The draw was secured as a staging area. What happened in those 30 minutes of precision fire saved dozens of lives and allowed a critical tactical objective to be met. Lynn's actions were not those of a lone wolf, but of an integrated team member using a unique skill set to solve a specific, crippling problem. The Winchester Model 70 had proven its worth not in theory, but in the blood and coral of Palayu. The news of the draw fight spread through the regiment. The mail-order rifle was now a sought-after asset. Officers began to specifically request Lynn and his Winchester for overwatch duties during advances. He was no longer just PFC Lynn. He was the man with the scoped rifle, the hunter in the hell of Palayu. On September 21st, his fourth day in this relentless counter-sniper role, Lynn faced his most daunting challenge yet. Intelligence from a wounded prisoner suggested a particularly skilled and prolific Japanese sniper was operating in a sector known as the Horseshoe, a curved ridge that had repelled multiple assaults. This sniper, the prisoner claimed, had over 20 confirmed kills and was demoralizing an entire battalion. Armed with this information, Lynn was attached to a company preparing for yet another push into the Horseshoe. His mission was singular: find and eliminate this master sniper. The duel that followed was a silent war of attrition played out over hours. Lynn took up a concealed position with a commanding view of the suspected area. He saw the evidence of the sniper's work, the placement of American casualties, the angles of fire. It became a battle of patience and perception. Lynn would watch a sector until his eyes watered, scanning for the single stone out of place, the subtle difference in shadow. The Japanese sniper was a phantom. As the afternoon wore on, Lynn noticed a peculiar pattern. The shots, when they came, seemed to originate from a general area, but never the exact same spot. He theorized the sniper was using a network of small, connected holes in the coral, moving between them after each shot. Lynn fixed his scope on the central area and waited for 3 brutal hours in the stupefying heat. Finally, as the sun began to dip, casting long, confusing shadows, he saw a piece of camouflage netting identical to the surrounding brush shift slightly, not with the wind, but against it. It was the sniper transitioning between hides. Lynn had a fleeting, half-torso target at nearly 400 yards. He led the movement slightly and fired. The netting convulsed and then was still. A subsequent probe by a Marine squad the next day found the elaborately constructed sniper's nest and its deceased occupant, a senior sergeant with meticulous records of his engagements. With that kill, George Lynn's 4-day tally reached 11 confirmed Japanese snipers. He had, in his own quiet, precise way, altered the battlefield. The Battle of Palayu would drag on for another 2 months of unimaginable brutality, ultimately claiming over 1,500 U.S. Marines and soldiers killed and 8,000 wounded. Japanese losses were nearly total, with over 10,000 dead. In the grand, tragic narrative of the operation, often considered a costly and unnecessary battle, individual acts of heroism like George Lynn's shine as beacons of skill and resolve. For his actions over those 4 critical days in September, PFC George H. Lynn was awarded the Silver Star for gallantry in action. His citation specifically highlights his extraordinary accuracy and cool courage under heavy enemy fire in eliminating multiple sniper positions, thereby relieving besieged units and saving numerous American lives. The legacy of Lynn and his Winchester Model 70 extends beyond a single award. His demonstrated effectiveness became a powerful data point in the growing argument within the U.S. Marine Corps for the formal development of a dedicated sniper program. While it would take more time and the lessons of Okinawa to fully cement the need, the proof of concept was delivered on the ridges of Palayu. A civilian-purchased precision rifle, in the hands of a man who understood its use, had provided a solution to a tactical problem that standard-issue weapons could not solve. Lynn survived the war, returning to Pennsylvania. His story and the story of his mail-order rifle faded into the broader history of the Pacific War, a specialized footnote in a campaign of general horror. Yet, it stands as a testament to individual initiative and the profound impact that a single soldier, armed with the right tool and unwavering nerve, can have on the fortunes of his comrades. In the annals of military sniping, it remains one of the earliest and most compelling case studies for the value of the precision rifleman in modern warfare, born not from official doctrine, but from the desperate necessities of a coral hellscape. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to WWII-Records as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.